Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we're going through 1 Samuel chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Tomorrow we're doing 1 Samuel chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12. So, get ready for this. The Ark. This is about the Ark of the Covenant mostly. Today, the Philistines and the Israelites go to battle. Israel goes out to meet the Philistines to battle them, and Israel was defeated soundly by the Philistines. So the people sent men to Shiloh to bring back the Ark of the Covenant, because they figured if they bring the Ark of the Covenant, the Lord would be there at the battle with them, and the Lord would just decimate the Philistines. That's what they were assuming was going to happen. But when the Ark of the Covenant entered the camp, all the Israelites screamed and yelled, and they shouted really loud, so loud that the ground shook. And the Philistines heard this, and when they discovered that the Ark of the Covenant had entered the camp, they started to panic. They're like, oh no, we're fixing to die, because their God is with them and their God is tough. That's that God that slaughtered all the Egyptians. They knew about it. But one of their leaders was like, show some courage, dudes. Otherwise, they're going to be our bosses. We're going to be slaves to them if you don't show some courage, stand up and fight. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated. And then the Ark of the Covenant was captured. Dun, dun, dun. There we are. They captured the Ark of the Covenant. And there's the little poor dude that they killed over to get him. And at this point, the Philistines take off. That exact same day, a Benjaminite man ran from the battle. They went to tell, he goes to report back what had happened. And when he entered the city, the entire city cried. Eli heard the outcry, and he's like, what's going on out there? At that time, Eli was 98 years old. So he was an old dude, and his eyes didn't move because he couldn't see. He was blind, essentially. And he basically asked him, what happened? What happened? Tell me. Well, the messenger saved the worst news to the very last. And when he told him, your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are both dead, and the ark of God has been captured, Eli fell backwards off of the chair by the city gate, and since he was old and heavy, his neck broke, and he died right there. And Eli had judged Israel for 40 years. Seems to be a standard amount of time. So here we have this map that I pulled up for you, because at this time, this is the travels of the Ark of the Covenant under the Philistines. They had captured the Ark of God, and they transferred it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. They then took the Ark of God and brought it into the temple of Dagon, placing it beside Dagon. Well, when they did this, after nightfall the next day, they go in, and Dagon had been knocked over. The big statue of Dagon, which was a god of theirs. Then they set it back up. The next day, it happens again, only this time the head breaks off and the arms break off. And then here's a depiction of that scene happening here. Now, Dagon, he was one of the Philistines' gods, and there's some controversy about Dagon and who Dagon was and what kind of god he was. And a lot of the depictions that we see of Dagon are him as a merman of sorts, a sea god. They depict him this way because many people believed that the Philistines were the descendants of a race of sea people who came from the ocean areas, and therefore they would worship sea gods, gods of the sea. So that's where this depiction came from. Well, the problem with that is nowhere in the Bible does it say that Dagon was the god of the sea. It doesn't say that. In fact, most people are now believing that Dagon was probably a god of grain and not a god of the sea, because that was one of the offerings they would make to him. They would make grain offerings to this god. So odds are he was not a sea god at all. He was probably a god of the grains. So now the hand of the Lord was weighted heavily on the Philistines. So God's already messed up their gods. So all right, let's move this sucker. So they moved this to Gath, and everywhere the Ark of the Covenant goes, the people were afflicted with tumors and boils and terrible disorders. So they pleaded to send away the Ark of God back to Israel, to its rightful place, so it doesn't kill them all and their kindred. So they go to Gath, they take it to Ekron, and then that's when they send it back. They basically load this thing up on a cart with 2 ox, and they send it packing. And it shows up at Beth Shemesh. To rid themselves of tumors brought by the ark, the Philistines placed the ark on a cart, like I just said, with 2 milk cows, and the cows pulled the cart to Beth Shemesh, just like I said there. So that's where the ark was returned. Beth Shemesh. Now, once it gets to Beth Shemesh, the people, what happened was they were kind of standing out there harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they looked up and they saw the ark, they were overjoyed to see it, because the cart came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stopped there near a large rock. The people of the city chopped up the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites then removed the ark of the Lord, because the Levites were the ones that were able to touch this stuff. The Levites removed the ark of the Lord along with the box containing the golden objects and placed them on the large rock. That day the people of Beth Shemesh burned offerings and made sacrifices to God, and when the 5 Philistine rulers saw this, they returned back to Ekron that same day. So, they went back. They got back and headed back home to Ekron. They gave the ark back, essentially. So, the people of Kirath Jearim came for the ark of the Lord, and they took it to Abinadab's house on a hill in Kirath Jearim. So that's the ending of where it ended up at that point. They consecrated his son Eleazar to take care of it at that point. Then, time had gone by, 20 years had passed since the ark had been taken to Kirath Jearim, and Samuel told him, get rid of all of your foreign gods. There's a theme here. It just seems to be that every time something bad happens to Israel, it's because they are worshiping foreign gods. So Samuel tells them, get rid of your foreign gods. All of those that are among you, dedicate yourselves to the Lord, worship only him, and then he will rescue you from the Philistines. And of course, they go to fight at Mizpah, and they win. At that point, Samuel judged Israel throughout his life for the most part. But Israel, towards the end of his life, they started demanding for a king. Samuel had gotten old. He had appointed his sons as judges over Israel. His firstborn son was named Joel, and his second was Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. However, his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned toward dishonest profit, took bribes, and perverted justice. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Kind of like Eli's sons. It's kind of coming a theme with the preacher's kids here, ain't it? Let's not be having the preacher's kids doing the bad stuff. But he was a judge. Anyway, I digress. So all the elders of Israel gathered together. They said, look, dude, you're old. Your sons are kind of horrible. They don't walk in your ways. They're bad people. Therefore, appoint us a king so that king can judge us the same as all other nations have. We're the only nation around that don't have a king. We need a king. So Samuel thought this was wrong. He's like, this is a bad idea. So he prayed to the Lord. But the Lord told him, they listen to the people and everything they say to you. They have not rejected you. They have rejected me as their king. This is God speaking. They are doing the same thing to you that they have done to me since the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, abandoning me and worshiping other gods. Listen to them, but solemnly warn them and tell them about the customary rights of the king who will reign over them. So Samuel told him all the Lord's words to the people. And they said, and he even told them, these are the rights of the kings. This is what a king can do. A king can take your sons and make them do whatever he wants them to do. He can put them in the army. He can make them harvesters. He can make them do all this stuff. He can take your daughters and turn them into cooks and bakers and perfumers. He can take your best fields, your vineyards, and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He can take 1/10 of your grain and your vineyards and give them to his officials and servants. He can take your male servants and your female servants and your best young men and even your donkeys and use them for his work. He can take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves can become his servants. When that day comes, you will cry out because the king you've chosen for yourselves. But the Lord won't answer you on that day. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. Even with all that, they said, nope, we got to have a king. So Samuel goes to God, and he says, God tells him, listen to them. The Lord told Samuel, appoint a king for them. And that is the end of 1 Samuel chapter 5 through 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So again, tomorrow is 9, 10, 11, and 12, and we will see who is appointed king. Be sure to click the like button, the subscribe button, and of course click the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow for another episode of the Bible in 1 year to Preacher's Husband. We'll see you then.